Indeed. Now then, after the Northern Irish elections, Sinn Féin is riding high. For power sharing to work, they have to do a deal with the Democratic Unionists. But so far they're insisting that the DUP's leader, Arlene Foster, can't come back as First Minister. The current system of governments there is hanging by a thread. And Sinn Féin's president, Gerry joins me now from Belfast. Welcome, Mr Adams. Can I ask, first of all, is the removal of Arlene Foster as First Minister next time round an absolute red line for you?
Well, we're not saying that she can't come back. You may know, Andrew, that the institutions collapsed on the back of a scandal on a renewable energy scheme in which it's alleged that up to potentially £500 million sterling has disappeared or been wasted. And there are allegations that that was caused by corruption or fraud. Now, we're not making those allegations. They come from within the DUP, about the DUP. So we're simply saying that needs cleared up. Arlene Foster, in fairness, says she's not guilty and she wants to be vindicated. So what we have said is that there needs to be an inquiry into all of this, and pending the outcome of that inquiry, without prejudice to that outcome, that Arlene Foster should not be in the position of First or Deputy First Minister.
But if she's cleared, she could come back.
Of course, and when we're dealing with Arlene Foster, Michelle O'Neill has been meeting, and I have met with Arlene myself in the past week. The tipping point in the current crisis came because of this scandal, but there was also difficulties with agreements which have been made not being honoured, and Martin McGuinness, for over 10 years in that office, has demonstrated how much Republicans want those institutions to work, so we want them back in place. But your government, Andrew, the government in London, on the back of Brexit and on the back of its own policy, wants to dismantle lots of the human rights aspects of the Good Friday Agreement. Brexit will drive this part of Ireland out of the European Union. The people here voted to remain. The parties returned in the last election, the vast majority of those parties are also for remain. And Sinn Féin have been arguing for a special designated status for the North within the European Union to stop the return of a hard economic border.
I want to come on to that. Just before I do, you've only got less than 2 weeks now to have these negotiations with the DUP and the British government and so forth. What happens if you haven't got an agreement after 2 weeks? Do you have another election?
Well, we're being threatened with another election, and I'm saying half jokingly that that's a sign of how much progress there's been made, that we're being threatened by a British government with an election. We used to be threatened with internment and all sorts of other coercions.
Being threatened by an election is better, I'm sure, but you're against it, are you?
No, if there's another election, we will contest that election. Of course, the election's just over. This election, no one wanted it. We didn't want it, but the position was totally and absolutely untenable. What we need, and this is what our focus is, because this is an implementation process that we're involved in, those agreements, the different elements of it, the Act na Gaeilge, the human rights elements of it, the Bill of Rights, these different commitments which have been made but not kept, need to be delivered on. And if that happens, then the institutions will go back in place, and we will continue to do our best to work for the people.
Right, Mr Adams, you mentioned Brexit just now. We've got a committee of MPs in the UK here saying that if Britain leaves without a deal, the border goes straight back up between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Do you think this is the moment when Ireland starts to look again at uniting?
Yes, and Sinn Féin have always been looking for Ireland to be united, but I consider the partition of this island to be totally and absolutely illegitimate and immoral. Now, in the Good Friday Agreement, we agreed, and the government in London is obliged, when the majority of people here want to see an end to partition, want to see Irish unity, then the government is obliged to legislate for that. So we have argued for some time that that's what should happen.
But at the moment, most people in Northern Ireland want to stay inside the UK, don't they?
Yes, and that's why we have a job of work to do to persuade them. And no one should be threatened by this. But even without Brexit, we've been badly served by the divisions on our small island. With Brexit, and this has been my firm conviction from the referendum result, with Brexit, we're going to see a hard economic border. The frontier between the European state and the British state is going to be on the island of Ireland, and that's why we have argued for a special designated status for the North. That doesn't infringe upon the constitutional position, but it does guarantee that we won't have the type of misery that's going to be inflicted on our farming, on our dairy farmers, on our agri-food industry, or on our enterprises.
Well, we'll talk about all of that later on in the programme with David Davies, but for now, Gerry Adams, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, Andrew.
And so to the weather.